All right, welcome to the breakdown. I'm your host, Marcus on the mic. I know it's been a minute, but we're still up in it. Let's get into really what's happening. You know the story they always sell you. It's a fairy tale, right? Some raw, hungry kid with a notebook full of rhymes gets one shot. A demo tape just happened to land on the right desk. A freestyle battle that makes the whole room go silent. Next thing you know, the world loves him. He got the gold chains, the platinum plaques. A legend is born. It's the dream, the ultimate come up. But what if I told you the most important person in that room isn't the artist? What if the dude in the shadows you never heard of, the one who found the tape, wrote the contract, decided what you were going to hear? And here's the kicker, the one who controlled how much the artist got paid, if they got paid at all. This isn't a story about talent being discovered. It's about talent being acquired. It's about a system, a machine. And it wasn't designed just to find stars. It was designed to own them. So the real question is, how did hip-hop discovery machine actually work? And who owned what it found? The thesis, Wall Street for rhymes is what I call it. For decades, the engine of hip-hop wasn't just the beat. It was the deal. The discovery machine was a web. Who you knew, which DJ had your tape, what magazine put you in the column, you know what I'm talking about? But behind every story about a kid from the projects making it big, there was a colder story being written in fine print. The machine wasn't just a talent agency, it was a financial system. Wall Street for rhymes. And it ran on three core principles that decided the fate of the whole generation. Master ownership, recoupment, and later the 360 deal. First, master ownership. Whoever owns the master recordings, the original studio files, controls that music. You know, the real. They decide which movies, commercials, and samples use it. They collect the checks as long as the song is worth anything. And in most standard big labels, you know, that deal, the label owned the masters, period. And then you got recoupment. Think of this like a casino credit line disguised as a blessing. The label fronts the money for the studio time, videos, marketing, travel, even living expenses. But it's not a gift. It's an advancement toward future royalties. You don't see a penny from your record sales until that entire tab is paid back. Now, here's the twist. They pay themselves back out of that slice of the royalties, not the whole pie. So if your royalty rate is, say, 15%, you're trying to pay off 100% of the spent with the 15% of the revenue. Now, industry lawyers and executives have admitted that a large majority of artists on major labels never fully recoup. They stay in the red while the music keep earning for the label. And finally, the 360 deal. When albums started collapsing in 2000s, labels decided a piece of the music wasn't enough. A 360 deal gives the label a percentage of almost everything. We talking touring, merch, endorsement money, sometimes publishing on top of the records. Every part of your career becomes their business. Now, these aren't just boring legal terms. They're the gears of the machine. And if you don't understand them, you can't understand how so many legends could make billions for the industry and only see a small fraction of it for themselves. The story they tell you about hope, the contracts are about power. The demo tape dream. Picture this. It's the early 1980s. No internet, no DMs, just cassette tapes. Little plastic time bombs you mail to a couple of addresses in New York and hope they explode in the right hands. Back in '84, the most mythical address in hip-hop wasn't a skyscraper. It was a college dorm room at NYU. Rick Rubin is a student running this new label, Def Jam Records, or Def Jam Recordings, I say, out of Weinstein Hall. Now, he prints the dorm room address on an early TLA record. And suddenly, the room is flooded with tapes from kids all over the country. One of those tapes comes from a sharp, hungry 15-year-old from Queens named James Todd Smith. On the cassette, he writes one thing: Lady Love Cool J. Now, Adam Horsrich from the Beastie Boys is hanging out with Rubin in his dorm room when they press play. The voice, the confidence, the rhythm, it cut through everything. So they called the kid in, and right there in the dorm room, they build a beat for what becomes his first single, I Need a Beat. The independent 12-inch sell 100,000 copies. For a dorm room operation, that's pretty insane. Def Jam goes from a campus hustle to a real label overnight. That's the fairy tale version. A kid mails a tape and becomes a star. It's real, but it's only half the story. The minute LL Cool J signed with Def Jam, the dream of discovery becomes a business transaction. That demo isn't just a song anymore, it's an asset. Def Jam's deal with LL looked like most deals at the time. The label funds the recording, videos, and promotion. In exchange, Def Jam owns master recording on albums like his 1985 debut, Radio, which goes platinum and helps cement the label's reputation. Now, LL gets an advance and royalty rate on sales, but only after Def Jam recoups every studio and promotion dollar out of his share. The dorm room address got his foot in the door. The contract decided who owned the house. Now, the A&R job wasn't just to find the talent. It was to secure that talent for the label on the best possible terms for the company. The artist sends a demo, the machine makes an acquisition. By the early 90s, the machine had evolved. It wasn't just about mailing tapes. It was about getting the right signal from the culture. And no signal was louder than a tiny column in the back of the source called Unsigned Hype. Being featured in Unsigned Hype was like getting knighted by hip-hop itself. It told every label, if you sleep on this guy, you're stupid. In March of 1992, that signal went up for a young MC from Brooklyn named Christopher Wallace. DJ Mr. C records Biggie demo and gets it to Matty C at the source. The write-up is wild, talking about how his rhymes are fatter than he is. That MC becomes the notorious B.I.G. The signal works exactly as it's designed. A young artist at Uptown Records named Sean Puffy Combs read the column and move instantly. He set up a meeting and signed Biggie. Then the machine does something more ruthless. Puffy gets fired from Uptown. Instead of leaving behind Big, he negotiates to take Big with him. He launches his own label, Bad Boy Records, in 1993 and made Biggie Smalls the flagship artist. Now this is where the discovery story becomes a business play. Under Diddy, Biggie drops Ready to Die. Some would say one of the most important albums in rap history. Bad Boy owns the masters, the slick production, the expensive samples, the hype-ridden videos. All that budget is recoupable against Biggie's artist share. So on the surface, the story is of a hungry MC from Brooklyn becoming a legend. Underneath, it's a story of an executive who understood that the right artist could be the cornerstone of an empire. Mr. C gets remembered as the guy who spotted Biggie. Diddy becomes the mogul who owns the records. In the machine, the person who discovers talent is important. The person who owns the masters and controls the paper is the one who really wins. We've been talking about the machine from New York. To really see how it works, you have to go south to a label built above a used car lot in Houston. James J. Prince starts Rap-A-Lot Records in the mid-'80s on the second floor of his dealership, Smith Auto, in Houston 5th Ward. The ideal is simple. Keep his younger brother, Sir Rap-A-Lot, out of the streets by turning his nickname into a label. Rap-A-Lot Records become the company. The group they're building become the Geto Boys, later known as the Geto Boys. Then Prince brings in someone the mainstream barely mentioned for decades, Cliff Blodget. Blodget is a computer science major and electrical engineer from Seattle. Around 1986 through 87, he moves to Houston and becomes Prince's business partner. Public records and later interviews identify Rap-A-Lot as co-founded by James Prince and Cliff Blodget. Cliff shows up with the gear and the technical brain. In 2026, he describes setting up the recording equipment on the conference room table at the car lot and cutting sessions right there, literally turning a sales office into a studio. In February of 1988, Rap-A-Lot released the Geto Boys debut Making Trouble, with Cliff Blodget credited as the producer alongside Carl Stevenson and the group itself. It's a chaotic record. Original lineup, rough energy, but the label's first full album. The press notice. A 1990 New York Times piece on gangster rap quote Cliff Blodget partner Rap-A-Lot talking about his own market analysis showed that audiences wanted more intense, darker lyrics and that he pushed the group in that direction. A Houston Press featured on producer Carl Stevenson said that Blodget built a home studio, then moved to Houston when Blodget hooked up with Rap-A-Lot Crowd and was assigned to help produce Making Trouble. Then the machine logic kicks in. Making Trouble doesn't break nationally. Within 2 years, Rap-A-Lot Records rebuilds the group entirely. We talking about cycling through 2 lineups, eventually dropping original members, and bringing in Scarface and Willie D. That makeover sets up the classic Geto Boy trio the world knows. For a long time, that label change is framed solely as J. Prince move, the ruthless executive fixing the product to save his label. But in 2026 interviews, Cliff Blodget finally tells his side. He says, Making Trouble was me, primarily, and describes sitting with Prince, stepping in from the business side, coming into the studio for a week or two, and helping call the decisions to reshape the group, advising on who stays and who goes and how the sound should change. The human story is simple. A Seattle engineer takes a risk, passes up a stable career path, and helps rebuild a studio above a car lot. He records a little-known debut album and helps decide which members get to keep their place in the group. The machine story is harsher. Those decisions shape who gets remembered, who gets erased, and whose voices become the label's flagship product. On paper, Rap-A-Lot is an independent label co-founded by James Prince and Cliff Blodget. In reality, as the company grows, Prince becomes the public face, the feared Southern mogul who named rappers in vogue, while Blodget's role as co-founder and early architect get buried in critics and old articles. For nearly 40 years, the Geto Boys' own big interviews barely says his name. It takes Willie D in 2026 to sit Cliff down and finally introduce him to the audience as Rap-A-Lot's co-founder and the guy behind the scenes who helped make crucial decisions. That's the machine. Again, just inverted. In most of this episode, the artist's name is the brand and the executive stays in the shadow. In Houston, the label name, Rap-A-Lot, and the group name, Geto Boys, become legendary. While one of the guys who wired the studio and shaped the first record stays mostly invisible in their story. And that matters, because to understand what happens when the discovery machine grows teeth, when it starts pulling artists into politics organized crime rumors and federal investigations, you have to understand the man who owned the car lot and the label, James J. Prince. Not every star is found through demos and magazines. Sometimes the machine isn't looking at all. Sometimes it just trips over greatness. Mary J. Blige's story sounds something from a movie. Now it's 1988. She's 17 in a shopping mall in White Plains, New York. She steps inside a karaoke recording booth just to mess around and record a cover of Anita Baker's Caught Up in the Rapture. Now her mother's boyfriend passes that tape to a friend, who passes it to an artist named Jeff Redd. Redd hears that voice and knows it's different. He sends that tape to the person who matters, Andre Harrell, founder of Uptown Records and CEO. Harrell is stunned now. He signs Mary J. Blige at 18, making her one of the youngest artists on his label. That's the miracle. A mall booth performance traveling all the way to a CEO's desk. Then the machine gets to work. Andre Harrell and his young protege, Sean Combs, just don't want a singer. They want a brand. They fuse Mary Raw church-trained voice with hard hip-hop drums, build fashion, and craft the attitude. Her 1992 debut, What's the 411, helped pioneer what's become known as hip-hop soul, and she gets crowned the queen of hip-hop soul. But that crown sits on top of familiar structure. Uptown funds the album and the marketing. In exchange, the label holds the masters. Mary becomes the face, but her most important work, the songs that changed her life, live on the label's balance sheet. Does it matter whether you get discovered through a demo, a magazine, a car lot, or a karaoke booth? For the contract, it doesn't. The path in it is different. The room you end up signing in is the same. If you really want to see the machine's power, you follow into a prison cell. By early 1995, Tupac Shakur is locked up. His bail is set around $1.4 million. His album, Me Against the World, hits #1 while he still sits behind bars. But commercial success doesn't mean cash in hand. Why? He doesn't have the money to walk out. That's when the machine shows up with paperwork. Suge Knight head of Death Row Records arrived with the contract. Death Row, backed by Interscope's money, will pay Pac's bail. In exchange, Tupac owed Death Row multiple albums. On TV, it looks like a rescue. A powerful man pulls a legend out of a cage. On paper, it's collateral. Bail money for master ownership and album commitments. When Tupac signs, he walks out of one prison and straight into a new financial one. Death Row now controls the release of All Eyes on Me and the projects that follow, recouping, spinning out of his royalty share under their terms. The label risk is limited. The artist's leverage is gone. We like to tell the story as loyalty, family, they had his back, but at the contract level, it's this. A man's freedom turned into a business transaction. That's the price of freedom in the machine. And it's a price you pay with albums, not just years. Not everyone just walks into the machine. Some people try to build something out of it. Sean Carter, Jay-Z, spends the late 80s and early 90s getting turned down by majors. Dame Dash is hustling, pressing up vinyl independently, selling them out the back of his trunk of his car. Kareem Big Burks is building street level distribution. In 1994, they stopped asking for permission and started their own company, Rockefeller Records. 3 partners, 1 label. This isn't just paperwork, it's self-defense. If the machine won't let you in, you build your own, right? Jay-Z's 1996 debut, Reasonable Doubt, doesn't move crazy first week numbers, but it's so undeniable the industry can't pretend not to see it. So in 1997, just a year later, Rockefeller Records doesn't just sign to Def Jam. They sign with Def Jam. They enter into a joint venture deal that reportedly sells half the company to Def Jam for around $1.5 million. The machine gets a piece, Rockefeller Records gets distribution and resources while keeping some control. For a while, it's the dream scenario. A street-built label partnered with major, founders still holding real power. Then, like always, the gravity shifts. By 2004, tensions between the founders are public. That same year, Def Jam's partner company buys the remaining half of Rockefeller for around $10 million, consolidating full ownership. Jay-Z accepts the job as president of Def Jam, becoming the boss of the label that just absorbed the company he started. Dame Dash and Big Verse walk away with their share of the buyout, but not the premiership. The machine now has the masters and all the votes. Jay-Z, who began by sidestepping the machine, is now sitting at the top of it. Later, that power has downstream consequences. One of Rockefeller artists, if you remember Benny Siegel, comes home from prison with an offer to sign with 50 Cent's G-Unit. As Def Jam president, Jay-Z has the authority to block that move, and he does. That's the evolution of the discovery machine in one career. Rejected by the majors, builds his own label, partner with the majors, sell to the majors, run that major, and decides which doors stay closed for other artists. Independence became leverage. Leverage became a buyout. The buyout put the masters right back into the machine. By now, you can see the pattern. Every story starts with a human moment. A tape on a dorm floor, a magazine column in the back pages, a mall karaoke booth, a car lot studio in Houston, a prison cell, a Brooklyn car trunk. But the outcome is always shaped by the same three mechanics: who own the masters, how recoupment works, and how far the deal reaches. And if the label owned the masters, they keep the long-term control of the recordings. LL's Radio, Biggie's Ready to Die, Mary What's the 411, Tupac Death Row albums, Rockefeller's catalog after the buyout. If recoupment is written aggressively, the artist's royalties never catches up to the label's spending, no matter how famous they get. If it's a 360 deal, the label shares follow their artists into touring, merch, and brand deals. The money you used to think was safe from the labels. That's how you get the paradox. The artist who everybody knows, and the label that quietly owns everything that made them known. Look, these stories are more than just history. They're blueprints of power. This breakdown of how the game really works hit you the way it hit me. Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when I drop. We're always digging deep and trying to get the receipts on the stories you think you know. And tell me in the comments which artist deal, which reality behind their come up surprised you the most. All right, let's get back to it. The romance of hip-hop discovery is powerful. The image of a young LL Cool J demo being pulled from a pile in the dorm room. The story of Mary J. Blige's voice echoing out of a mall booth. The Geto Boys recording their debut album on a conference room table over at car lot. Those moments are real. They're the spark. But they're only the first page. The real story, the one that decides the money and the faith of these icons, are written in legal language. clauses and subclauses that these young artists, with no real guidance, were in no position to fully understand. The discovery was the poetry, the contract was the business, and the business was always about control. Through owning the masters, labels keep a claim on an artist's best work for decades. Through recoupment, they create a system of debt where you could be a cultural giant but still owe the company store. Through 360 deals, they expand that claim into almost every corner of an artist's life. Today, the machine looks different though. The gatekeepers aren't just A&Rs and magazine editors. They're playlist curators, TikTok trends, and recommendation algorithms. An artist can build a global audience from their bedroom now. That's real. But the fundamental question is still the same as it was before. Who owns the work? And who profits from it? Talent can make you famous. Only ownership can make it free. The Discovery Machine hasn't stopped. It just changed names. The next episode, we go to Houston to look at one man who learned that machine, bent it, and became a myth inside of it. Was never captured on the original drawing. James J. Prince. Oh, yeah.